when you said this earlier, that's when I made the mental note to bring it back to Lamar Jackson. Because you're right, Mac Jones is a distant fourth when we talk about quality of quarterback for the New England Patriots in the AFC East. But Jeff Howe of The Athletic reports, and I tend to think he's right, the Patriots aren't going to make a run at Lamar Jackson. Now, there are plenty of factors. The one thing we rarely talk about when we look at the Deshaun Watson deal last year, because we get so focused on the fully guaranteed contract, look at the draft capital the Browns gave up to get Deshaun Watson. You are throwing away all these picks that become affordable, effective players in your organization for 5, 6, 7 years, maybe longer than that. And it was one of the other things that Robert Kraft said this week, that they value those draft picks. So it's not just the money, it's the draft capital. I guess I'm not surprised because it could disrupt the way you're trying to build a team, but it's Lamar Jackson, and he's dramatically better than Mac Jones. Does it surprise you at all that it doesn't even seem to be a consideration for Bill Belichick as he tries to turn this thing around against much better competition?
Does not surprise me at all. I think, Bill Belichick is of the school that the best trait of a football player is not ability, but availability. And that's a dumb old cliche. I get it. But this has been my opinion forever on the Lamar Jackson story. Everyone would like to have Lamar Jackson on their team. On the surface, theoretically. But then the reality of it sets in. The last 2 years, the Ravens have played 12 games in January and December. And of those 12 games, Lamar Jackson has started and finished one. He's missed 34% of the snaps the last 2 years. He plays a position and plays the position in a way that he is going to get exposed to a lot of hits. And so people continue to talk about no one wants to get involved in the guaranteed money. No one, wants to do the Ravens work for them. And I get that. You're right about that. You're absolutely right. The number one thing, and Arthur Blank said it the other day, basically, you hope this guy lasts another X number of years playing the position the way he does. But the fact is, he's been hurt a lot the last 2 years. Do you want to guarantee 4 or 5 years of nearly fully guaranteed contracts or fully guaranteed contracts to a guy who the last 2 years has missed a third of the time because of injury, however they occur? So that's one part of it. But Mike, the other part of it is I think, is that the way the Patriots work and the way the Patriots function is that they've never, going back to Tom Brady, they've never wanted one guy to take up, 18, 20% of the cap. And however it would be structured long term, this would leave even if you push it way into the future, with fake years on the end of a contract, this is going to be an anchor on the Patriots franchise for years if it doesn't go well. Now, it might go great, and he might not get hurt and all that stuff. But the fact is, the reason why this contract is hard for anybody to do and why I think nobody really wants to enter into it is they don't want a potential anchor on their franchise.
And when we eliminate the Patriots, which I think is an accurate thing to do for the reasons you explained and others. However, let me just say this first, though, because it's indisputable he missed time each of the last 2 Decembers. The one thing that I still can't fully understand and appreciate is whether he would have come back and played last year if he had his long-term financial security. I don't know that, and I don't fault him for refusing to come back at anything less than 100% without his long-term financial security, because he's assuming risk with no protection of any kind if he comes back for the last few games of the regular season. If he plays in that playoff game, he's got nothing beyond that game by way of any type of injury guarantee, contract, nothing. So I don't know that we're ever going to get to the truth, because I think he's very defensive about it. Look at his tweets from this week. He was suggesting at one point he wasn't even at 90% as the end of the season came about. And there's mixed signals that you get from various sources throughout the league as to where he was and whether he could have played, and was there frustration in the locker room that this guy could have played. And you have Mike Vick say, just put a brace on it. And at one point, I think even John Harbaugh said, we don't think he can injure it any worse than it already is if he would try to play. So that's the one caveat that I would apply. I don't know whether he would have missed all that time last year, Peter, if he had his contract. But you're right. He was injured 2 consecutive Decembers. It's inherent to the way that he plays football. It's one of the reasons why he's looking for such significant financial guarantees in his contract. The best quarterbacks in today's NFL play in a way that there's a greater degree of mobility and thus more opportunities to get injured when you're running around, either down the field or behind the line of scrimmage. Used to be, didn't need a fully guaranteed contract. Pocket passer, there's no reason to not pay him. There's no reason to even consider cutting him. He's our guy for as long as his contract lasts. Now, those guarantees are meaningful. So it just speaks to, and Chris and I agreed within the past week or so, there's a stew of factors. Is there some collusion going on? I think there is. But that's not by any means the motivating factor that's causing teams to shy away. It's a bunch of things. And you throw them all together, and it doesn't surprise me that we're hearing no, 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 no. And the only team out there that maybe is thinking about saying yes is the Colts. And I'm not sure whether or not they're just doing that so there's somebody that isn't in lockstep with everyone else saying no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you.
Look, Mike, remember I asked this question to a few teams at the league meetings. The question was, and what was the number that Lamar Jackson said? I think it was in response to an Adam Schefter tweet that, basically, why do I need an agent when I get an offer of 3 years for 100 and what was it? 128, 133,
133.
Yeah, 133 million. And so if you ask this question, 133 million, what is that? The Ravens, it sounds like the Ravens offered him a contract of 3 years and $43 million a year, $44 million, a year. So I guess I would just ask this question, fully guaranteed. Is there anybody out there who thinks that is unfair? I can't find many people who think that offering a guy who's been hurt a lot the last 2 years a fully guaranteed contract for $43 or $44 million a year for 3 years, making him a free agent again at age 29 to take another bite of the apple. And if he is healthy for those 3 years, somebody's going to pay him $70 million a year in 2025 or 2026. That's my only point to this. We have gotten so caught up in the whole, people like Richard Sherman would say he deserves this, he deserves that, and Deion Sanders saying, don't listen to anybody else. The bottom line in this thing is people can say whatever they want about how this is unfair and the Ravens are acting in bad faith or whatever it is. But if Richard Sherman were a general manager today, do you think that Richard Sherman would look at dispassionately at the case of Lamar Jackson and say, I will give him 5 years, fully guaranteed $250 million? And if he would, hey, it could turn out he'll be executive of the year. If Lamar Jackson is healthy and delivers a Super Bowl for his team, and then Richard Sherman would be right, and all the naysayers like me would be wrong. But I don't think that is a logical way to go based on the last 2 years.
And Richard Sherman could never be dispassionate in a case like this because Lamar Jackson is the current guinea pig for Sherman's campaign to get more and more players, and ideally all players, to not have agents, because that continues to be the big impediment here. And every once in a while, I'll see this argument that, the Ravens should do a deal with him because they did a deal with Roquan Smith, who doesn't have an agent. So why not do a deal with Lamar Jackson? He doesn't have an agent. And that gets it backward. At some point, if you're going to represent yourself, you have to know when to say yes. Roquan Smith knew when to say yes. Other players who have represented themselves knew when to say yes. Say yes to 3 years, 133. Say yes to the best offer that the Ravens made last August. And we still don't know the full terms because the dribs and drabs have been selective leaks by the Ravens, or not the Ravens, excuse me, let me get it right, by Lamar Jackson or the NFLPA. The Ravens haven't said anything. I'd love to know the full terms of the offer that the Ravens made last August that Lamar said no to. But that's the key, Peter. If you're going to represent yourself, fine. At some point, it's on you to do a deal. At some point, you have to know when to say yes. You can't say no to everything that is presented to you. And if you sit back, cross your arms, and say, I want this, if you're going to go Veruca Salt, I want, and no one's ever going to give you what you want, at some point, you got to take what you can get, or you ain't getting anything. That's the bottom line here. And that's what leads me to the next point. What's the end game here? If no other team is going to pursue Lamar Jackson because they already know what he wants and they don't want to give it to him, and they don't want to have to give the Ravens what they would want by way of trade compensation, it comes down to Jackson and the Ravens. So they either work out the long-term deal they've been unable to work out for 2+ years by July 17, or after that, they come to a consensus on a 1-year deal that currently would pay Lamar Jackson $32.4 million, which I wouldn't play for if I were him. So what more do the Ravens put on the table? And do they ever get to a point where he says yes? Peter, and it started as a question somebody posed to me 4 or 5 weeks ago, the idea of Lamar sitting out 2023, and it's like, he's not going to sit out. And it's like, you know what? Maybe he'll sit out. Because until he says yes to something, he is sitting out. He's never said yes to anything other than his original contract, which was slotted and there was nothing to negotiate. He's got to say yes at some point. And again, the Ravens get player after player to say yes, with agents, without agents. They put an offer on the table that someone says yes to. The one aberration is Lamar Jackson. And I'm not trying to gang up on Lamar Jackson, but folks, before we take up this, it's on the Ravens to make him an offer he'll take, it's on him to accept an offer that gets made. At some point, he's got to say yes.
I just keep thinking, Mike, and one of the reasons why I wrote my column this week, that I think it's incumbent on the Ravens right now to start looking at that a very, very thin class of veteran free agent quarterbacks. And there are a few, but I'm thinking Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Brian Hoyer. And I'm sure that there are others, but I think it's incumbent on them to start looking at this class of quarterbacks, because I don't think you want to take a quarterback in the first round, and probably not in the second round of this draft. I would anticipate the Ravens would take a quarterback maybe in the third or fourth round. Who knows? I don't know. But I don't think you want to use a very high pick for a guy who you're not sure is ever going to play. But as of right now, Mike, as you look at this scenario, every offer that they've made apparently has been rebuffed because none of them have resulted in a deal. And it strikes me when something like this happens, it strikes me that Lamar Jackson does not want to play for your team. So if that's the case, they better be ready. And you do not want to go into your season, in my opinion, with Tyler Huntley as your absolute, no doubt, 17-game starting quarterback. You've got to find a way to create competition. Now, maybe that is in trading with somebody for a quarterback during training camp, who knows? But if you're trading for a quarterback during training camp, when you realize with finality that Lamar Jackson is either not coming in or he's not going to come in till Labor Day weekend, then you're dealing from a position of ultimate weakness. And that's why right now, there's no question this is being hugely disruptive. We talk about the Patriots being number 4 in their division. The Ravens aren't number 4 in their division. but it's possible if they go into the season with Tyler Huntley and some retread veteran as their quarterback depth chart, they will be far and away. I shouldn't say far and away. They would be the fourth team in the division at the quarterback position, with Kenny Pickett above them. And I don't think that's a position you want to be in. And so Lamar Jackson has the Ravens in a very, very tough spot right now.
There was a report this week from JoeBucksFan.com that before saying yes to the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield had an offer from the Ravens that he declined. So they're at least exploring these possibilities to protect themselves in the event they don't have Lamar Jackson. So we spin it forward. I believe at this point, no one is going to try to negotiate with, trade for, sign to an offer sheet Lamar Jackson until after the draft. Right now, the potential candidates, I believe, would be teams that are secretly lurking in that first round of the draft for a quarterback. Every year there's a team or two, or sometimes more than that, and sometimes we never know because they don't come out and tell us, that was thinking about snatching a quarterback but kept their mouth completely shut. If there's teams out there that are thinking, we'd like to get one of the top quarterbacks, let's see what happens, and then they don't, then maybe they say, we go back and revisit Lamar Jackson. And the Colts would be the first of those. Like if the Colts end up seeing quarterback 1 and 2, somebody trades up with the Cardinals, takes a quarterback number 3, and they just don't take a quarterback, they're the obvious candidate to come back at Lamar Jackson. There could be others that are thinking about taking quarterbacks in round 1 that are being extremely discreet. So that's where a market's going to come from if there is one. But Peter, if there is no external market for Lamar Jackson, and if he doesn't want to play for the Ravens, and we know he's very strong-willed, whether you call it determined, strong-willed, or stubborn, right? I want a fully guaranteed contract, and I'm not backing off. I'm going to do this without an agent, and I'm not backing off. I don't want to play for the Ravens, and I'm not backing off. I mean, we need to be ready for the possibility he doesn't play this year, and we're back in this spot next year. And how's it going to be any different next year? And then he doesn't play next year. I mean, I had this, and I don't want to say epiphany, but it was just this moment the other night when I was thinking about this. It's like, there's a way, and it's not like he storms out and says, I'm retiring at age 26, but it just happens one day at a time where he just never plays again because he never finds an offer that he says yes to.
I guess that's possible, Mike. It just seems, I don't want to say
it seems ridiculous,
nonsensical, but it just seems so highly unlikely. I guess
I know,
nothing would shock me.
But when you take it one step, you take it one step at a time.
If I asked you this question, that you're not going to get everything you want, but I would pay you $30 million. You put a price tag of $50 million on PFT, and you go out in the market and say, hey, who wants to buy this from me? Blah, 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 blah. And the most you get offered is $35 million. At some point, don't you say, I'll take the $35 million. I can never spend that money in my lifetime anyway. Because knowing how frugal you are, you couldn't spend $3 million, but all I'm saying is that, to me, when I look at this situation at some point, and again, this is well tread ground right now about why a player in his position right now should have an agent. It's because you need somebody to tell you, look, here are the alternatives. Here's what you need to think about. And wouldn't it be better for you if you made, let's say, the next 2 years, 90 million or whatever it is? Wouldn't that be better than just to say, okay, I'm not playing on this 1 year at 32. And unless you give me whatever the number is, the magic number, 52, 55 million a year guaranteed, you're not going to get that. So how about playing for this amount of money that for the next 6 or 8 months, you never thought in your whole life you would ever make until the last couple of years?
It all makes perfect sense. The problem is there's been no perfect sense made from Lamar Jackson's perspective at any point during these negotiations. That's why, to me, when you think about it in isolation, it sounds nutty. When you look at it and you compare it to the decisions made and not made until we got to this point, it isn't all that nutty to envision him continuing to say, no, I want what I want. No, I want what I want. No, I want what I want. And next thing you know, it's 2025 and he hasn't played football for 2 consecutive seasons because he never said yes. He's so determined to go it alone. He's so determined to not have that Jiminy Cricket telling him what he should be doing and listening. He wants what he wants. It's uncompromising. It's unrelenting. And at this point, it has him without a contract. And again, until he says yes, he'll continue to not have a contract. And I don't see a path out of this maze where he ends up saying yes, unless he changes. Either he has to change or the Ravens / some other team have to change. And there's been nothing, Peter, so far this year that tells me anyone else is going to change. He's the one that's going to have to change. Like you said, if you want $50 million for an asset, and damn it, I want $50 million, and you ask everybody out there for $50 million, and they all tell you, sorry, the most we're giving you 35. If I don't say yes, I get 0. That's the key. At some point, Lamar's got to say yes to something less than what he wants, or he continues to get nothing. And you know, I flirt with this idea from time to time because, you know, you're a Lamar hater because you say he needs an agent. No. If I was a Lamar hater, I'd say, hey, all right, man, keep doing what you're doing. You're kicking ass. Keep representing yourself. This is all going really, really well. Keep attaboy. I mean, at some point, I just got to say, this guy's 26 years old. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness includes within it the right to screw up your life if you choose to do so. Go for it, Lamar. Go for it. It's not my business. It's your business. Keep saying no to every offer that comes your way. And you're going to wake up someday, you're going to be 30 years old, and you want to play football in 4 years, and that's that. That's that. And so that's if he never says yes, Peter, that's where we end up. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.